Good evening, everybody. How is everybody tonight? Good. When I look out at this room, every month it is so wonderful. But this month is particularly special to me because we put out a very special invitation to people who have been participating in an inclusive entrepreneurship effort called the Create Campaign. And so how many of you all have been part of the Create Campaign? Just raise your hand. There's my folks. Thank you all so much for being here. And I am so happy to welcome, with that being said, Curtis Whitten. He was our very first speaker at the Create Campaign 3 years ago, but Curtis has known me since I was young. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because he has so much information to share. His story is incredible, and we are going to be very blessed by what he has to share with us tonight. With no further ado, please welcome Curtis Whitten.
Someone said it could be done, but he would Chuck replied. Maybe he wouldn't, but he wouldn't be the one who couldn't say so until he tried, and he did it.
And there's your mic.
My mic, okay. Well,
Curtis,
can I do one thing before you get started?
yes.
You know what? It's not what you know, it's what? No, it's who knows you. So if you would do me a favor, stand up real quick, because she on a time frame. Stand up, everybody stand up. Turn around and introduce yourself to somebody you do not know. Okay, y'all can sit down now. You had to break the ice, Christina.
I know, right? Look, they're still going. All right, y'all. Go ahead and take your seats so we can hear from Curtis. Thank you very much for that wonderful icebreaker. You had started 3 years ago at the Create Campaign. You opened up with that statement. Mm-hmm. Of course, there's that saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But you just shocked the crowd. But it's not who you know, it's who knows you.
Right.
Who knows you? Why do you say that?
Well, I believe that, it's one thing for me to know Dr. Rand, but if he knows me on a personal level, that makes all the difference in the world. I think a lot of times what we do, we come in a room, and I share with my son, get to know everybody in the room, introduce yourself. You can't get fed unless you know somebody, right? You can't eat unless you're at the table. So unless you're at the table, you can't eat. If you don't know nobody and nobody knows you, it's all none. So I guess that's my concept. Really, I want to have a personal relationship with everybody I meet because I never know who's going to change the trajectory of my life or my company or whatever I got going on at the time. So, I just talk to people.
Absolutely. Well, we're glad you're here talking to us tonight. Everybody, he's going to drop some jewels, some knowledge. So make sure if you have questions for him to tweet those questions out. Use our handle at StartupGrindICT and also #StartupGrind. Curtis, we noticed something immediately different about you, your accent. Tell us where you're from.
My accent. If you can't understand me and I talk fast, it ain't but 2 states, Louisiana and Florida. I'm a Floridian.
What was it like growing up for you?
Well, I grew up with, my dad was a cab driver. My mother had an 11th grade education, 4 boys and 2 girls. I'm the second. And, it was, we didn't know we were poor. You're from the South. You're poor, but you don't know you're poor. We didn't figure out that I was poor until I went to school and I didn't have the same shoes that everybody else had. We had them hot boxes. They'll call them generic shoes now, but we had what they call hot boxes. You went to a discount store and you went and got a pair of shoes. So, but it was a great time. My father was very instrumental in my life and my value system, him and my mother. It was 2 things that they preached in our home, and that was education and God. Okay. God first and then education. And so, I didn't know that you weren't supposed to go to college. I thought that that's just something that you did. I wasn't the best of students, but I thought that was something that you did, and so. But it was a great experience. They taught us the value system, hard work. You get your education, and you take care of your family.
Did you have any entrepreneurs in your family?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
So again, we're going to hear from an unlikely entrepreneur. You went to college. Tell us about your college experience. What did you study? What were you interested in?
Well, I was interested in criminal justice. I wanted to be a police officer, but I didn't like uniforms, so that created a problem.
Yeah.
That created a problem. So my goal was really to come to college. I wanted to be a police officer, but my ultimate goal was really, and I'm going to talk very frank with you. You know, my son's in the audience. He's heard a lot of this, but I'm going to talk very frank, and we've had candid conversation. You know, I really, coming from the family I came from, you know, my whole goal was really, it wasn't really about college. It's really about being a professional athlete. You know, you come from the urban area. You know, you come from a very poor family. Your only out was through sports. At least that's what we thought. And, you know, and that's kind of what's my mantra. I was the athlete of the family, 4 boys, and I was the best athlete. I was All-American, 2-time All-American coming out of Florida. Had the opportunity to come to Wichita State and did that. My very first semester, I tell the story that when I came to Wichita, I never even left the hotel when I came for my visit because it was so cold, and I didn't own a coat. So they brought me back in the spring, and I went out there, and I said, well, this is like taking candy from a baby. You know, and so my very first semester, as you can imagine, it's football season, and it's extremely cold, extremely cold. I think I went to class maybe 2 times. I had a 1.6 grade point average. Really, I had a 1.6 grade point average. And got back home. I made it through the next semester because I took underwater aerobics, weightlifting, pool, and basic English. True story. And I don't tell that, a lot of times when I'm talking to young folks, I tell that story because I want them to understand the journey.
Right.
And I want them to understand that my failure wasn't my signature.
Right.
So I tell that because I want them to really understand. But I did that. I got through that semester, and I still was on the same path. School wasn't important. Sports was important. And I was pretty good at it. My very next semester, my sophomore semester, I got kicked out of school after having probably the best season that I've had since the 2 years I was there. I was a consensus All-American that year. I led the nation in interceptions. And I got kicked off the team. I'm not going to divulge why I got kicked off the team, but let's just say I got kicked off the team. You know what I mean? You're talking about an urban kid coming into a predominantly white university who had no clue. I went to all-black high school, grew up in an all-black community, so had no clue to the politics and how everything goes and how they do things. So I was kicked out of school. I transferred to Mississippi Valley State in the SWAT, Enid Beena, Mississippi. I wasn't enrolled in school. I was just going to school, playing football. True story, playing football. And it rained one day. I'm a Florida boy and I'm Mississippi. You know the mosquitoes. I'm down there with the mosquitoes and them green frogs. And I'm scared of frogs. I know I'm a big guy. And it rained so hard one night, them green frogs come out of there, and I said, I'm out of here.
There's always something. There's always something when you are going along the path that you have an opportunity to make a right, make a left, to take your option and choose. What became that choice for you when you realized this wasn't for you?
Well, that really came, Christian. I went home. I went home, and being from Florida, you know, my dad is very spiritual. He was a preacher as well as a cab driver. And so, you know, his thing was, you can't stay here, you got to do something. I was hanging out one night, and, you know, back home, you know, you got the projects, and a lot of y'all familiar with the projects. And a good friend of mine, he was home for the summer, and we went to a house party, and you have to go through the projects to get to the party. And we had stopped, and I was in the front seat, he was the driver. We get in arguments with some guys. The next thing I know, he's laying over my lap with a bullet in his head. And so I made a decision that I was going to come back to Wichita. My goal was, you know, my parents didn't really could afford for me to go to school. I didn't have any mentors to help me really get from where I was and understand the dynamics of sports and how that worked. I didn't really have that in my family because I was the first one to go to a Division I school. And so what I did was I actually came back to Wichita. I enrolled in school. I got a job at Local Joe's, which was on 13th and Oliver at the time. I worked as a dishwasher for $3.35 an hour in the complexes that are right across the street from Adams School. I slept in that one-bedroom apartment on a mattress, and I learned how to make everything you could possibly make from potatoes, because that was the cheapest thing that you could buy. And then God, you know, I mean, I always tell people, you know what, faith is the substance of things thought of. And I always tell people, you know, my faith. A guy by the name of Ron Chismeyer, and I know some of you guys might be old enough to remember Ron Chismeyer. Ron Chismeyer took the job at Wichita State. And I get a call from a doctor by the name of Ray Cook. Ray Cook was the doctor for the school. And at the time, Ray Cook was a very good friend of mine. He's an alumni parent. And Ray called me and said, well, Curtis, Ron Chismeyer just took the job at Wichita State. He come from Arizona State. We had just played Arizona State when I was a junior and a sophomore. I had 2 interceptions, 1 for a touchdown, 18 tackles. He want to know whatever happened to that sophomore that y'all had at Wichita State. And he says, he want to talk to you. So I called Ron Chismeyer, and Ron Chismeyer posed 2 questions. He said, 1, do you want an education, do you want to play football? I responded, I want to play football. The dude literally hung the phone up on me. He hung the phone up on me. I called, get a call a couple of days from Ray Cook saying, hey, he wants to, what happened? I told him the story. And then at that point in time, I called Ron back. And Ron said to me, he said, Curtis, I know you can play football, but I really want to know, do you want an education? We wouldn't even be having this conversation if you couldn't play football. But we value education, and I'm going to make sure that you get a degree. And that was kind of the turning point in my life in terms of, you know, going in the right direction. That was the first coach that I ever had that really said, you know what, you can graduate from school and you can be more than an athlete. And so I took that opportunity.
You took that opportunity. Thank you for setting the stage for us, because it's going to put into perspective of what happens next. How did you begin to get into your company? What was that step that you took to go ahead and launch your company? We're going to fast forward a little bit.
You want me to fast forward to that? Okay, essentially what happened.
Yeah, the stage is set. We got to get to this part.
Essentially what happened is that, you know, I opened a bookstore called Afrocentric Books and Gifts, named it after my first daughter. That's my son back there. He thinks he's more handsome than me, but I think I'm, you know, they say we look alike. Side note. But anyway, we opened the store. That failed. We opened a couple of more businesses after that.
But hold on, why did you want to open up a bookstore?
Well, you know, I love history. You know, I was a history guy. Even though I wasn't a good student, I love history. That was just my thing. I love history. So I decided, you know, that we needed something different in Wichita, especially within the African-American community. And we had one, but it wasn't what I thought it needed to be in terms of the substance. Great guy owned the store, a lot of positive energy, everything. But I wanted something a little different. And so we opened up the bookstore.
I remember shopping there when I was a kid. It was around 21st and Woodline.
21st and Woodline.
So how long did the bookstore stay open?
For 3 years.
For 3 years. Did you know what steps to take when you were going to launch that store? Did you know?
Absolutely not.
Business plans? Tell me.
Absolutely not.
How did you take those steps?
You know, I just read. You know what I mean? I started reading about stuff. I started going to classes, enlisted SBA, scored any resource that was out there that I thought that was pertinent to me, knowing what I need to know, I did. You know, all my friends kept saying, they're not going to give you no loan. You know, I made sure my credit was right. You know, I made sure all of the nuances that I heard about, I did. And that's kind of what I did. I just kind of educated myself on what I need to do.
So pause right there. You just said, in setting the stage, that school wasn't really your thing. Football and sports was. But when it came to a passion to create a store, you did everything that was necessary and more, educating yourself in order to launch that company. Isn't it incredible what entrepreneurship does, the drive that it instills in people? You will stay up, you will burn hours, you will work shifts that you didn't even think was possible for you to accomplish that dream. So that worked for you. You launched the store. It had some success. You decided to then enhance and move forward. What was your next move forward?
My next move was the janitorial. I hated that.
So why did you go into janitorial if you hated it?
I didn't have nothing else to do, and I figured it was easy money, I might as well do it. You know, that's kind of how you think as an entrepreneur, right? You're like, oh, you know, it sounds like it's good, it's easy, it's not, you know, it didn't cost a lot to start. It was an easy startup, you know. The cash flow was good if you could do it. But you know what, it was just that I had the entrepreneur itch at that time, and I was looking for something to do. You know?
I think that some people in the audience can relate. Once you start something, it seems like, oh, you have all of these ideas, right? You feel like you can do anything next. So it didn't work for you with janitorial, but what did, in that quote-unquote failure, what did that teach you about what was going to be your next move?
Well, what that taught me was really I need to go back and do a little more research, dig a little deeper, understand the industry that I was in and what I wanted to do and what I was going in, And I didn't even do a good job of that because my next move was my brother-in-law taught me to open up a vending machine company.
Okay, all right. We have people around us who encourage us. They saw some success and maybe see some more possibilities. So where did the vending machine idea come from? Did he do that? Was he working in that?
He was doing a vending machine company in Dallas, had a lot of success in it, was doing extremely well, had left General Motors and started the company with 3 machines and grew it to a large company. And I kind of said, well, it's pretty easy. You know, the concept was great. It's cash money. You know, I didn't understand I didn't understand the equipment layout. I didn't understand what that cost and what those costs looked like. So I did a very poor job at, really kind of understanding what that nuance was. But out of VendTech came, I was in the SBA 8A program at the time.
VendTech is this company's name.
Yeah, VendTech is the company name. I was a vending machine company. And Terry Taylor, who's with the SBA, Wayne Bell, with the SBA, he was my football teammate. And so Terry Taylor, though, was very instrumental in me making the decision to go into that. Terry, we were in the office one day, and she says, well, Curtis, why are you doing vending machine? And if any of you guys know Terry, that's just kind of how she is.
Yeah.
Why are you doing vending machine? I don't know, Terry. I've been getting a lot of cash, and I just put it in my pocket. It sounded like a good idea to me. And so she says, well, your background is law enforcement. That makes no sense. Have you ever tried doing security? There aren't a lot of companies in the Midwest, minority-owned companies, that are currently in the 8A program, and you could probably do well because that's what you do, and that's what you have a clear understanding of. And so instead of changing the name, I decided, because VendTech was so unique, the federal government didn't really care about what the name was. All they really cared about was your past performance. Did you have enough past performance to really do the job? And so that's and I decided, since everybody in Wichita knew me by VendTech, knew that was my company name, why rebrand it? Let's just keep it that way and make your focus security.
All right. Now, remember I said we set the stage and then we fast forwarded to the bookstore. In between those years was where you get your experience in law enforcement. Very briefly, give us the highlights of those years, which is what Terry had spoken to when she encouraged you to move forward.
Well, I worked for the Department of Corrections for about 5 years. Hated that job. But that's where I started. I started as a corrections officer, moved on to what they call an SSO, court service officer. Stayed there for a while, and at the time, I was going home and I was miserable. I was just absolutely miserable. Loved the inmates, but hated my coworkers. I shouldn't say that. but it is what it is, right? You get it. So I just, was like, I hate going to this job. And so my wife at the time says, what do you really want to do? And I said, well, I really want to be a federal agent. And I didn't know that you put your application in the region that you want to be in. And so she suggested that, well, why don't we just put the applications in, we'll just send them everywhere you think you want to be. And I sent them to all the places I thought I wanted to be, and everybody kept coming back saying, you know what, your GPA is not high enough. You got some experience, but not enough experience. And I get a call from a guy by the name of Cecil Turner out of Houston, Texas. And Houston, and I always tell Christina, God has really kind of have your roadmap plan, and you just really don't know it a lot of time. Cecil, I called Cecil and had a conversation with Cecil, and Cecil said, if you're ever in Houston, stop by the office and we'll get you an interview. I like your resume, I see how, the things you've done as an athlete, we can get you an interview. And I said, well, what, Cecil, I'm coming there next week, because I just had a good friend of mine who had moved down there. And so I get down there, went in, and got the job. She said, can you run it 2 miles under 16 minutes? Yeah. Can you do this many push-ups? Yeah, I can do all of that. I knew academics was a thing. I knew that was going to be a struggle, but I knew, okay, if you can get through that part, you can do this here.
So again, that was the time, that was in between college and that was in between the bookstore, the entrepreneurship itch. But because of where you were in your day jobs and the law enforcement and corrections background, it helped prepare you for what ultimately was your major milestone, your major turnaround as it relates to success.
Absolutely.
Again, sometimes we don't necessarily know. We're on day jobs. We're trying to juggle that dream with the day job. But those skills that we're getting, we never know how they're going to show up again in our dreams. So that was really great. All right, so Terry gives you this recommendation. She talks about putting together the connection of your law enforcement background and getting away from vending machines.
Right.
What steps did you take next?
Well, the next step I took was, at the time, the city of Wichita was having a lot of major issues with contracting with minority-owned companies. And so I came up with this strategy. I could never understand why 10 contractors would go in there trying to get a contract that you couldn't service. So I knew the parameters of how those contracts work. I studied and researched that. And my next move was to find a security contract that I felt like I could do, knowing that the contract was going to be lowest bid, and that's it. It got nothing to do with how you can perform, got nothing to do with any of that, just low bid. So I decided I'm going to have the lowest bid, period. Well, nobody going to be lower than me. I don't care if I make a dime. I went in, I bid the contract, I won the contract for $46,000 a year. For I think 5 years, for $46,000, $46,000 a year. My rent was $480 at my office, and my profit was $280. You do the math. So
it's a sacrifice.
Yeah, so I was really working for the deal. But the whole premise behind that was I wanted to prove that I had the capacity and the ability to do this and to perform this contract. So once I did that, I won Small Business of the Year. Nobody knows what the amount was. They just know he won Small Business of the Year. Big article in the newspaper, people calling. So now, you got the past performance. Not only did you have the past performance, though, but I built a relationship with the purchasing manager, who was Melinda Walker at the time. And so that relationship, because we did a great job, because we developed that relationship in a way that she respected me and I respected her, and we wasn't begging for anything, we're going to show you that we could perform. It became a thing where every time something came up, I would get a call. So
those relationships are important. Again, it goes back to who knows you.
Absolutely.
All right, so you started to begin to grow VendTech. Talk about the culture that you have in your company.
Oh, wow. I'm not the smartest guy in the company, to be honest with you. I'm really not. I wish my team was here, but I always tell people, really, the culture in our company is family-based and faith-based. If you can't help somebody else, if you always got your hands closed, then you can't get blessed. So that's just our culture. We believe in our company that, whatever's for you is for you. And, you can't stop our blessing. And that's kind of how we operate as a family.
That's right. And that's how you also help to build partnerships and collaborations when you started pairing up on contracts.
Absolutely.
And that's how you guys grew. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Can you talk about some of those approaches to partnering up with other entities to get bigger and bigger contracts?
Well, our very first deal was we did a deal of the regional contract. I don't know if you guys are familiar with MBAF up in Manhattan, Kansas. We get a call one day. We had gotten a contract in Kansas City from a small company that could not perform the contract. We turned that contract around in 30 days. It's a weapons contract. We did it in 30 days. So we ended up getting the contract at MBAF. And the funny story about that particular deal was that when we got the contract, a guy from the contracting office contacted us, wanted to see if we can do the contract. And we were like, we could probably perform it. It was hot. They had taken it out of the regional contract. The regional contract is what they call Region 6, which is Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and Iowa. So every federal building throughout those 4 states is what they call a regional contract. They took MBAF out of that deal, put it a standalone contract, and the federal government did not want to take a chance at giving the company that was performing that contract at the time that particular deal. At the time, that particular company was actually finna get debarred, so they decided to pull out of the whole contract. At the time it was $250 million. They're going to pull out of this deal. The company from the West Coast, from the East Coast, not understand the culture of the Midwest, from Kansas to Waterloo, Iowa, you do it. That's the drive. So what we did was we sent as part of that process, the federal government requires that a contract that large has to have a subcontracting piece. So we decided as a team, well, we tired of growing organically. We don't got, that's too long. We don't have the resources to acquire and do any acquisition. So our method of growth is going to be joint venturing, teaming, or subcontracting, period. Nothing else. And what we're going to do is make them put the money up first, too. Because our added value was you know, we don't talk about it, but our added value was we want to know their own company and we can do the job. So we sent out an email saying to all the companies that we thought had the capacity and the capability of doing this particular contract. Everybody came back saying, we'll give you 5%. 5% is a standard. We give you 5%. 5%? No. I tell you what. And we wasn't really looking at the money. We never really looked at the money. It was never about the money. What we really looked at it was, how do we gain enough past performance that allow us to grow? That's all it was. How do we get enough past performance? The contract, so what we did was, they called us and we said, hey, we want 25%. We want a joint venture.
Did you get it?
We got it.
All right.
We got a joint venture. And of course, you know the story, you know the numbers. The joint venture was over $340 million over 5 years. We talked them into that. You know, it hadn't been an all great relationship. But what we've tried to do is make sure that we maintain this relationship, that we respect that relationship. And the funny part about that is that what that relationship did, what we did was, and tell you this part, we didn't have what it takes to do the initial, what they call a capital call. The capital call at that time, they put up, I didn't have a bank that would secure a loan for me. We didn't have no cash in the bank. We had none of that.
Sounds like a grind.
We had none of that. Essentially what we did was we said, hey, we got an idea. Why don't y'all put up the capital call? We'll pay you 1% over prime and amortize it over and tell us how long it's going to take. It's going to take you 18 months to pay it off. We said, good, we'll take that. We'll take that. After 18 months, we got positive cash flow. Everybody happy. We're going to run it for 5 years. Not only are we going to run it for 5 years, in the back of my mind, you know what I'm thinking. Hey, now the contract is that amount, 728 employees. We got 4 offices, we got an office in Kansas City, St. Louis, Des Moines, and Omaha. So as a small business, I'm going to walk into your office and say, hey, you say, what's your capacity? I say, hey, this is what we could do.
And look at that, for somebody who didn't like school. That's incredible. Curtis, there are a lot of people in here who have dreams. There are other people in here who have acted on their dreams to launch their business. As you look back over your points of success, what were some of the major lessons that you learned in how to conduct a successful business?
Well, I always come away with 3 things. You know, capital, you have to have capital. You know, you got to have that. You know, and you don't always have to go by the traditional way. Sometimes we think that we need all the money in the world to start a business or be successful in the business. You know, sometimes you just have to make those personal sacrifices. It's just what it is. Network. I'm a big network guy. You know, I truly believe in networking. You know, I think that that's probably, if you can't do anything else, you have to network. You have to develop relationships, because those relationships are what's going to thrust you. I told Christina and them the other day, I ain't never seen anybody get to the finish line without no help. Right. I don't care what nobody say. Barry Sanders was one of the greatest backs you ever seen run that football. But I guarantee you, he couldn't have ran through 11 people without somebody falling down in front of somebody. So everybody gets to the finish line with somebody, you know, and then know what you're doing. You know, if you choose that particular field, make sure that you understand that field and you got a good grasp on that field. You know, I always say that, you know, failure is not an option, but failure is not fatal. You know what I mean? It's just not. So, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, how many times you fall down, it's that you have the ability to get back up. And that's what I've always said to myself, that, you know what, you know, and you know, I tell Christina, we have our trials and tribulations even now, given the success that we have. It's just business. You know, my goal is that we need to keep the doors open. If we can keep the doors open, we got a chance. If the doors are closed, then we don't have a chance. And sometimes you have to make personal sacrifices to keep those doors open.
That's right. And that's that resiliency. Absolutely. As entrepreneurs, you have to be resilient. You have to be innovative in order to grow. In your interviews, you went ahead and put out there about the figure that you're kind of working with. What's around the range of the dollar figure of your company right now?
We have 2 companies. One's about 5. Our highest bid on that deal about $14 million. The one we currently in the joint venture is about, I don't know, $60 million, somewhere like that.
Understand where he started his story at, you guys. Seriously, understand that. That is very powerful. I mentioned before we even began talking about this inclusive entrepreneurship push, it's really just words to say we need to activate more entrepreneurs of color. to be quite frank. In the state of Kansas, if you look at the representation of minorities, populations, period, based on their ownership percentages in this state, we do not own companies at the same rate. We do not employ people at the same rate. The revenues that our companies generate are not comparable, again, to where we are. We have to bridge that gap. Curtis, can you talk about what it is like to be a minority entrepreneur in terms of being a role model in this regard?
Too much is given, much is required. And I would say that, my whole thing has never been about the money. It's always been about the legacy, period. It's never been about that. My father was a cab driver. My mother had an 11th grade education. I very seldom seen my father, but he was very supportive, gave us everything that we thought we needed and more, I tried to bring that same mindset when it came to giving back to my community, making sure that my family was taken care of and had the resources to be successful. And so that's kind of how, I don't make any excuse for being a minority-owned company. I always tell people, that's not our lead-in. We don't talk about being a minority-owned company. We just want to be a good company. Yeah. That doesn't mean that we don't understand the challenges that minority companies have. We clearly understand those challenges, but we also know that, in order to get to the finish line, you got to start somewhere, and I always tell people, it's like anything. If you ain't, and I said it once before, and I keep saying it, if you ain't at the table, you can't eat. You can't eat if you ain't at the table.
So where are you going now with your company? I have 2 more questions. You all better tweet, because after my 2 questions, I'm kicking it off to you all.
We still doing the same thing. We have 3 components of the company: the security piece, we have the administrative support piece where we do logistics, we do accountants, we got all kind of personnel on that, and then we do security system. So our goal is to continue to do that. My goal when I came in here, like I told you, was to leave a legacy. Be in a position that, that I can leave something for my kids, I can leave something for my community, and that's where we at with the company. We just want to keep growing. We want to be as positive as we can. We want to be a role model. We want to continue to help people. We have people come around and ask us, about it. It's not rocket sciences. It's faith in God and persistence and perseverance. It's not rocket science. They make it sound like a rocket science. When you go talk to the banker, he make it sound like rocket science. It ain't. Either you can pay the loan back or you can't. That's what they're going to ask. And if you ain't, where's your collateral?
All right. Finally, my last question for you before we go to audience questions. You did really good. Can you talk about Wichita and entrepreneurship now? Are you hopeful for what is happening with events like this, with people collaborating and trying to push the conversation about Wichita forward to our generation now?
I'm very hopeful. I think that Wichita is prime. Of course, it's an entrepreneur city. A lot of great entrepreneurs come from this city, and you could take away from that they did it. They did it, and I was here and heard Mr. Ryan speak. He did that through relationships. So I think that it's small enough. You can get around. It's not a big city. You can get to know people. For us, it was a perfect place to grow. It was a perfect place to interact and to meet people and become friends and develop relationships. And so I think I'm very hopeful for it. I think that the sky's the limit. You got to be smart about it, but the sky is the limit.
Awesome. Curtis, thank you so much for sharing with us.
You're welcome.
Tonight. Let's give him a hand. All right. Now it's your turn. Jacob,
I
what
actually
questions do we
didn't
have?
see anything come in through. Wait, one just came through.
Thank you.
Actually, this question is for Christina, actually. Yeah, coming right at
Who's
you.
breaking the rules?
What is the most important thing that you've learned from Curtis?
Oh, goodness. Wow. Well, again, Curtis has known me since I was young. We went to the same church. And when I started in my entrepreneurship journey, which is a very interesting story in and of itself, Curtis took the time to sit down with me and tell me about his journey, flaws and all. I mean, just brutally honest. He challenged me to get over some of the obstacles that I was putting in front of myself. And some of those obstacles I've heard from those felt like it needed to be perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. You just need to put your first foot forward and keep walking after that. And additionally, he ignited a light in me that when you are in a space where you might be one of a few, you walk in that space confidently. There's leadership and there's power, even if it's a quiet power. And so I really appreciate that. But the biggest thing that Curtis has given me is his time. Too often, we discredit the value of time. Time is one of the most valuable things that we have, and for him and his success, tell us where you were just yesterday.
I was in Santo Domingo, DR. I was in the DR.
Put your microphone up so they can
I was
hear
in
you.
the Dominican Republic, have a great time.
Okay. He is everywhere. He is everywhere. But he made sure to be back here tonight. He makes sure to answer calls, emails, and I don't take that for granted. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you for that.
Another question that came through. What's the best advice you can give someone looking to start a business?
No, the best advice I would say is do your research. Be diligent in doing your research. Dot your I's, cross your T's. Look for help. You got the SBA, they got a great office here. Good friend of mine, Wayne Bell, we played ball together. They've got a great office. SCORE is a great resource, WSU. We've got a lot of great resources. So utilize those resources, and most of those resources are free. Mm-hmm. They're free, so take advantage of those resources.
Absolutely. It's about making the time to take advantage of the resources here in the room tonight. We also have, can you wave from the SBA? We have a new SBA deputy director, district director. All right, he is here. So make him feel welcome, Wichita. He is here. Over in this corner, we have Network Kansas. Network Kansas is another organization that helps to provide funding, including funding for entrepreneurs whose businesses are located in the urban areas of Wichita through the urban e-communities. So there's tons of workshops, tons of programs. And I mean, looking across this room, you have bankers, you have attorneys here, you have other entrepreneurs, you have graphic designers, photographers. I mean, look at all of the power right here in this room. So he's absolutely right. Use it.
Another question. How did those first few business failures help you be successful once you launched VendTech?
One more time.
How did your business failures help make you successful with VendTech?
Oh, wow. Again, I think, just through perseverance and persistence, I truly believe that it was something I had a passion for. And I think that, you got to find something to get out of bed for. And my get out of bed was my 2 kids, my wife, my 3 kids. But that's what my get out of the bed was. That, and you got to find something that makes you want to get out of bed every day and say, I'm going to do this here. I want to be successful. I want to give them a better life than I have. So for me, that was really what drove me and motivated me. Again, I say, and I tell my kids all the time, failure is really not fatal. It's going to hurt a little bit. It's going to sting a little bit. But believe me, if you get back up, the sun going to come back up.
And I want to say, too, because I do want them to hear this from you, that success isn't always glamorous either. In order to get to success, you've got to go through the grind. Can you tell them about your first contract sitting overnight? Yeah,
I had my very first contract was Mennonite housing on 9th and Grove. And I was sitting up there. Mennonite housing was doing the contract with Key Construction. Andy Bias was the head guy over that deal, and they needed someone to watch the facility all night long on 9th and Grove. And 9th and Grove. They ain't had no lights. It's just me and my car. and I had this one right over here, and I had this one over here, and I had one eye open. And I was out there from 6 o'clock in the day to 6 o'clock in the morning for a whole year. That was my very first contract. I would get off work, get enough to eat. I had a good friend of mine. She would come down, Norvell would come down and sit with me because her mother was in the hospital. She would sit with me until 12 o'clock, and then she said, I got to go home. But that was the very first contract that I really had in security. But again, it set the stage, making that personal sacrifice, doing what you got to do, because that's just what you got to do, and it was just me,
Thank you for telling me that.
Can you point to a certain point in your life where you made a decision that changed the trajectory of your life?
Again, Ron Chismile, that was really the turning point in my life. That and the incident with my friend, those were the 2 pivotal points in my life that I said, I always knew that I wanted to be successful. But, I always share this with young men. When you're an athlete, and some of y'all might can understand what I'm saying. When you're a successful athlete, coming out of high school and then going to college, it's a lot of pressure, especially when you're from an urban area, and you think that your sole livelihood depends on and your family is you being successful in sports. So when Ron posed that question to me about education, because to be honest with you, I wasn't a bad student. I just wasn't the student that I could be, because at the end of the day, it wasn't important to me until somebody really said, you know what, you could be more than what you are, and you don't have to be a football player. God has blessed you with talent to play sports, but that don't mean that that's what you got to do.
That's a message for all of us. We can be more than what we are.
What does the typical day in the life of Curtis look like?
Oh, you don't put me on the spot. I'm normally up at about 4 o'clock. I'm in the gym at 5 o'clock. I get back home, eat some oatmeal. I go in the office, deal with a lot of emails, see where we're at with contracting, see where we're at with hiring people. We try to get out proposals. We do proposals we probably push out 20 proposals a year, which when you think about the type of contracts we do is a lot of work. I do quite a bit of traveling to various sites, various locations. We do a lot of travel. We have an office in D.C., Hyattsville, Maryland, where we have an office, so I'm down there quite frequent. And so, and then I come back, I go to the gym, and I'm an avid golfer, so I golf every day I can play. So that's my stress relief. That's what I do. And my kids are, all my kids are grown except my baby boy, and so I can do whatever I want to do after that.
My kind of entrepreneur. Well, you've dropped a lot of amazing advice tonight. So our final thing that I want to ask you is, what's the one thing you want everybody in this room to walk away with?
If I had to say one thing, failure's not fatal. Your mistakes aren't your signature. And you can do anything that you want to do if you got faith. If you truly believe that you can do it. If you truly believe that you can do it, it's not that you get knocked down, it's that you have the ability to get up. And everybody's success don't look the same. So don't quantitate your success to someone else. You make your own story, and then you tell your story.
Give him a round of applause. And as always, we always have a thank you gift for our speaker. But tonight, Andrew Goff with Reverie actually has a special little gift for you. So I'm going to bring up Andrew Goff with Reverie Coffee Roasters to talk a little bit about what he has for you, something special.
Thanks, Jacob. That second to last question was mine, by the way. Thank you. I wanted to know what I needed to do, and I'm not getting up at 4 o'clock. Maybe I will. Okay, yeah. So I got an email probably 4 months ago asking me if I did what we call toll roasting. As a coffee roaster, you can oftentimes roast coffee for someone else's sales purpose. It was a very cryptic email. I didn't quite get it. But little did I know, this young lady here, Kelly, had been trying to figure out how to help her brother in a program to help raise funds for an organization called Veterans Without Orders. This is an organization that I'll let them talk more about shortly, but in short, we spent 4 months trying to create this program alongside of them as their provider of a product, and so this is actually the first bag that's going to be going out of this product that launched today. So if you leave today, you'll see this. This is a way to go online. You would buy a product. It would go directly from them. We would process and sell it out. Here's a discount, by the way, so for everybody in this room will get that. But Tapped Coffee, as you can see on her shirt, is the program that will donate 100% of their profits, and I'll let her explain that, and then who this gentleman is over here.
Okay, so Tapped Coffee is a local veteran-owned company that's dedicated to addressing the world water crisis. Some of the largest growing coffee regions are actually the most at risk. So by partnering with Andrew, we're able to source our coffee from those communities. And by partnering with VWO, Veterans Without Orders, and donating 100% of our net profits to them to fund international clean water missions, we're able to fight the world water shortage. It really does go from farm to cup, back to farm. And this is Gene. He's with Veterans Without Orders, and I'll let him tell you about them.
Veterans Without Orders, it's another nonprofit organization for veterans like me that once we get out, we don't know what to do, so we bring it back into a business. And what we do is we go to Guatemala and all these other locations. We bring this Sawyer water filter machine, and we teach them how to use it. And then most of the missions that we've done, I believe it's 3 so far, 6. I saw 3. No, but the missions we name after individual soldiers that have passed away, so we also, honor those that have gone before us. So it's a good deal.
I just want to say thank you to them for allowing us to help support your mission. They mentioned kind of from farm to cup and back. It actually helps us fulfill at least 2 of our own personal missions, so it's a pretty awesome opportunity. And I'm excited to be able to hand you one of the first offerings that we'll be able to make. Hopefully we'll be selling a whole lot tomorrow for anybody who goes out and goes on the website. Please share it with your friends. This is not a just Wichita opportunity. This is something that we can actually, it affects everybody in our entire country. So we're very excited to be a part of it. And thanks for allowing us to give you this gift.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap for Startup Grind. Please hang out, network, come say hello to Curtis. I imagine he'll let you do a selfie or 2 with him on this awesome Startup Grind screen. So with that, I'll let you guys with the evening. Have a great night.